We know who the top 3 quarterbacks are in some order, but what about after that? What if you miss out on one of those guys? Who are the stud quarterbacks you can target in your fantasy drafts that will help you win championships in 2023? Hey, before I get to those guys, let me remind you, flockfantasy.com/endgame is the place to be this fantasy football season. You can come play redraft fantasy football with Pierre and myself, compete for cash prizes. Not to mention, we will do a individual breakdown of your team. One of us will break down your team, let you know what we like, what we don't like, what we would change. Not to mention you get access to our bonus articles, bonus videos, our rankings, our draft rankings, our in-season rankings. Plus, you're going to get some endgame swag as well. So flockfantasy.com/endgame, the place to be in fantasy for 2023. Check it out. Outside of the top 3, the early round quarterback I absolutely love this year is Lamar Jackson. It's easy to forget that this guy was the QB5 before his injury last year, was averaging 22 points per game. And I know the knock on Lamar Jackson is the same knock everybody always has. He can never stay healthy. But I think this year might be the year because he finally got paid. He finally has that contract. He'll be motivated to prove his worth, to prove the contract. Last year, I feel like part of the reason he never came back was because he didn't want to risk further injury and he wanted to get paid. That's gone now. I think he'll be back. But here's the real reason I love Lamar Jackson this year. Todd Monken. That's right. New offensive coordinator Todd Monken is going to totally overhaul this offense. They're going to go from a Stone Age offense to a modern offense. He's already talked about wanting to bring back Lamar Action Jackson, letting him sling it, and that is what Todd Monken likes to do. We're still going to get 800 to 1,000 rushing yards. We're still going to get 6 to 10 rushing touchdowns. But if Lamar Jackson is allowed to sling it more, especially with the weapons he has now, Zay Flowers, Odell Beckham, Mark Andrews, Rashad Bateman, he could not only dominate on the rushing side, but also on the passing side. I think Lamar Jackson is primed for one of his best years ever, something close to what he did in his MVP season. So for me, Lamar Jackson, a guy I will happily take as my QB1 early in drafts. Another quarterback I love early in drafts is Justin Fields. And what's the big knock on Justin Fields? He can't throw. Well, guess what? He couldn't throw last year either. 2,200 yards passing, 17 passing touchdowns. And what did he do? He finished as a QB5 despite missing 2 games. He was an absolute stud. There is really no argument you can make against Justin Fields unless you think he's going to stop running the ball, which he's not. Not only that, the Bears went out, they added DJ Moore, who is significantly better than anybody he was throwing to last year. Darnell Mooney was his wide receiver 1. I don't even know who his wide receiver 2 was. Cole Kmet, I mean, he was throwing to nobody last year. DJ Moore is a significant upgrade for him. And despite what you think that this guy can't throw, he's not accurate, he could throw. He was a great thrower in college. He was highly accurate in college. But the thing is, he doesn't need to put up Patrick Mahomes numbers. He doesn't need to throw for over 4,000 yards and 30-plus touchdowns because he's going to give you 1,000 yards rushing. And again, like Lamar, 6 to 10 rushing touchdowns. If he can just give you 3,000 passing yards and, 22 to 25 touchdowns, he's going to destroy fantasy football this year. This is what I keep saying about these running quarterbacks, and people don't want to hear it. They don't have to put up massive passing numbers. They just have to be good enough in the passing game because their legs will take care of the rest. Justin Fields, one of the most athletic QBs in the game right now, is going to give you tremendous upside with his legs, and I think he gives you plenty more in the passing game this year. Loving Justin Fields. Then moving down a little bit, another quarterback I love farther down in ADP is Trevor Lawrence. I think we're going to see an even better Trevor Lawrence in year 3 than we saw in year 2. And let's be real, last year was basically like year 1 for Trevor Lawrence. I know he was a rookie 2 years ago, but man, he had to play with Urban Meyer, that mess of a team. Can't even call it an NFL team. That was a total joke. Basically didn't even get a rookie year. Last year, finally had a real head coach, Doug Peterson, a quarterback kind of whisperer, 4,000 passing yards, 25 passing touchdowns. Really came on in the second half. Now with another year of experience, I expect an even better Trevor Lawrence. This is a guy who was a generational talent coming out of college, a consensus #1 pick. There was no doubt that this guy was going to be a success. He showed it last year. I think he gets even better this year. Let's not forget, they added Calvin Ridley to an already pretty stacked passing attack. They had Christian Kirk. They had Evan Ingram. They had Zay Jones. Now they've added Calvin Ridley. He's got so many weapons around him. I think we see Trevor Lawrence put up a 4,500-yard season and a mid-30 touchdown season. Kind of similar to what we saw with Joe Burrow last year, the kind of leap he made. I think we see that kind of leap from Trevor Lawrence this year, so I love him kind of in that middle round of QBs. Now moving down a little bit farther, I will happily take shots on Deshaun Watson. This is a guy who every year in Houston, outside of his rookie year where he tore his ACL, don't forget, he was a top 5 QB. So basically every year he has started and finished, he's been a top 5 QB. We were telling people last year, they were getting all excited. Oh, Deshaun Watson, he's coming off suspension. I'm going to grab him. I'm going to stash him a month early or whatever it was. And we were cautioning people, hey, he's not going to be that good this year. He hasn't played football in 2 years. He's coming off a major suspension. He doesn't know the offense. He doesn't know his teammates. He's probably going to struggle. And guess what? He struggled. You shouldn't be surprised by that. You should have expected him to struggle last year. It would have been more surprising if he didn't. Now he's going to have a full offseason, not having to worry about the off-the-field stuff, not having to worry about a suspension, an entire offseason with this coaching staff, with these offensive players, with these wide receivers in this system. He's going to be dialed in, and I've talked about it over and over. Whether you want to believe me or not, it's fine. But everything the Browns have done this offseason points to them being a pass-heavier team than we've ever seen in the past. They're paying him $1 bazillion. They already had Amari Cooper. They already had People Jones. They went out and traded for Elijah Moore. They drafted Cedric Tillman. They plan on throwing the ball and throwing it often. And even down the stretch last year, 16 times with Deshaun Watson, they got inside the opponent's 6-yard line. They only ran it 1 time. They're going to call his number at the goal line. They're going to trust him. I think we see another big season from Deshaun Watson, potentially a top 5 season from Deshaun Watson. He's got the weapons around him. He's got the talent. He can do it. Now, if you're waiting even longer on quarterback, I'm going to recommend you take Dak Prescott. I don't know why people are so low on this guy in fantasy year after year. When he came back from injury last year, he was good. Over half his games had 20 or more fantasy points. I expect that to go up in 2023 because this new system with Mike McCarthy, this West Coast system, instead of the Kellen Moore system, which is like drop back, wait for your receivers to get down the field, and then chuck it into coverage. This system is get the ball out quick, timing, accurate, and let your receivers, let your playmakers make plays. We're going to see his interception numbers drop significantly. Last year was one of his worst years ever as far as interception percentage. That is going to come way down. I think his touchdowns go up. He actually was on a good touchdown pace. He had 25 touchdowns, even though he missed 5 games. So he should easily get into the 30 touchdown mark. We know this is an offense. They're not going to be a run-heavy offense. They got Tony Pollard, Malik Davis, Deuce Vaughn. They're not going to lean on the running game. They're going to throw it a bunch, but it's going to be better passes for Dak Prescott in the sense that they're easier throws, more accurate throws, timing throws, not down the field throws where a guy might not have any separation. That's not what this offense is going to be this year. I expect Dak Prescott to bounce back in a big way, be an elite quarterback again in real life and in fantasy. So if you're waiting on QB, take Dak Prescott. And finally, a guy I keep talking about, kind of in the same vein as Lamar Jackson, Justin Fields, that is Anthony Richardson. Pretty much a guy that in most leagues is probably going to be a guy you can get in your final round as your QB1 because most people are going to be scared off of him. Why? Because he can't throw. Because that's what people always worry about with these running quarterbacks. Oh my God, they can't throw. Again, Justin Fields had 2,200 yards and 17 touchdowns in 15 games. That's barely a touchdown a game, and I can't do the math very quick in my head, but it's not a lot of yards per game. Anthony Richardson doesn't need to throw for a lot of yards. He's more athletic than Justin Fields. His combine testing numbers broke all the records for quarterbacks. This guy is an absolute freak athlete, maybe the freakiest QB we have ever seen athletically. Of course, there's question marks about his arm, but who cares? Can he get 2,200 yards and 17 touchdowns? I think he can because he's probably going to be the day 1 starter. They drafted this guy with a number 4 pick. All that's behind him is Gardner, Noodle Arm, Minshew. He's not going to beat out Anthony Richardson. And if he does, he's not going to hold on to the job for very long. And don't forget, Justin Fields was the QB 32 after 5 weeks last year and then went on that tear when the Bears finally unleashed him and said, go ahead, run to your heart's content. The Colts are not going to ask Anthony Richardson to drop back 35 times and be a pocket passer. That's not who he is. Maybe he can develop into that, similar to guys like Jalen Hurts and Lamar Jackson, but this year, that's not who he is. They're going to let him run wild. 10 to 15 runs per game won't be out of the question for Anthony Richardson. This guy has absolute home run potential every time, can rip off huge touchdown runs like we were seeing with Justin Fields last year. Don't worry about the passing. It will be enough. This is another guy who has the potential to run for 1,000 yards, run for double-digit touchdowns, and if he does, it won't matter what he does throwing, especially where he's being drafted. So that's 6 of my favorite must-have QBs, but if you want to see 6 of my favorite wide receivers, check them out right here.